Hey, I am Mustafa Sharif. Thank you so much for listening to Urbanistica podcast. Super interesting topic, super interesting guest. I'm happy that they give the time. Now it's kind of a rush hour for them because in 2 days we're going to receive the Placemaking Europe newsletter. So I have the pleasure to talk about this topic together with Nazaket and Jeroen. Hey, and welcome to Urbanistica podcast.
Hello.
Hello. Thank you for having us.
I'm super happy. The big thank is for you because I know you're gonna send us in 2 days, right?
Yes, yes, on Friday it's gonna come out.
Yes, that's great. And I'm looking forward to hear the story behind the stage, behind the newsletter that we get every month. Super cool. So I would like to start with you. You're the storytellers. We can start with you, Nazakat. How would you like to introduce yourself? And please tell us, what are you passionate about?
So I'm an urbanist with a background initially in political economy and development studies. Yeah, once my academic part of my life ended, I also started focusing on urbanism and cities and became quite quickly excited about the topics that concern it. So I was super interested in the ways to research and observe the spatial domain and social relations that occur within it. And for me, different methodologies existed for doing that. So it might be kind of quicker, cheaper, lighter interventions, performative acts. It might be some media tools like podcast that we're doing today, or even film, and well, classical research tools as well. But I think I quickly became passionate about it. And I'm originally from Baku, Azerbaijan, but I lived in already in the UK, Italy, Spain, and now I'm based in the Netherlands where I'm working with STIPO, mainly focusing on placemaking Europe and its activities.
Yeah, so big journey.
Yeah, kind of.
Wh-
Still
wh-
continuing, I guess.
when did everything started? Your passion?
Actually, it's interesting that my passion for the city and urbanism, it started when I visited exhibition by a Dutch artist, Constant Nieuwenhuis. He has this exhibition about the New Babylon, and it's all about the city and the role of the play and creative play in the city. And it's a bit utopian, but it kind of made me realize the role of the city in our lives and how we also as humans shape the cities and environments we live in. And then after that, when I came from Spain, moved back home and lived there for the next 3 years, I did quite a few tactical urbanism interventions, some research, exhibitions, conference, and series of events. So that's how it all started. And I'm quite interested in writing and researching as well. And then I thought that, oh, Netherlands seems like a right country to move in because the things and urbanism here kind of are a bit on a different domain and it gives access to more, let's say, European context. So yeah, that's how it started and continues at the moment.
Yeah, super interesting. And Jeroen, how would you like to introduce yourself? And please tell us, what are you passionate about?
Yeah, thanks. Well, I love cities, and I think I especially love creating better cities. And if listening to Nas' answer, for me, it really started with my father, basically. I live in Rotterdam, in the Netherlands, and as you might know, Rotterdam was destroyed in the Second World War. The inner city was destroyed. My father was born in the Second World War, and himself and his generation say we have to build a city. So I was raised in the fashion of feeling responsible for creating a better city. So that's what I'm doing, and a lot of people who are from my generation in Rotterdam feel the same way. But I was also trained to say, the city does not belong to the government, or the city does not belong to anyone. The city belongs to everyone. So I'm really passionate about creating cities together. That's what I've been trying to do as a civil servant. I've been a civil servant for a big part of my career, but I've also for a big part of career work at STIPO, the team for creating better cities, where we co-makership is what we have joined as a passion. But this is also something that we try to do in Placemaking Europe, finding the people who are passionate like ourselves to create better cities with an emphasis on public space, plinths, and ownership, informal ownership of giving people the responsibility to create better cities together.
And Jeroen, you mentioned that it was kind of responsibility that you got it from the past generation and you continue with it. Why you fall in love with keep going with it? Why you didn't say, okay, but it's not my business? What made you continue it?
Yeah, it's a good question. In the beginning, I think I've been looking for the right way to influence to play a role. I started working at the policy level, and I really enjoyed that. but at some stage, I started to work closer together with the people who make a difference at the street, bottom-up initiatives. And that's for me, that was the real spark. Then I discovered, what I'm good at or what I'm passionate about is combining the strategic level and the implementation. And how can you not love that subject? There's so much creativity going on in the city, from the rooftop gardens to the pop-up cinemas and all that kind of stuff. And on the other hand, there's people who are changing the system to give space to those initiatives, or destroying the system and not give space to those initiatives. And it's for me, it's always been fascinating, and it's what I do during my work, but this is basically what I do in my life. I
Yeah,
like.
that's very inspiring. And Placemaking Europe, when did everything started? And also, there is a big question: is this something relating to Placemaking X in USA?
Well, it started in Placemaking Europe. Uh, I've always been interested in working internationally because there's a lot of international inspiration you can get. And for me, it started with the Erasmus scholarship I got when I was a student. That was a start to work internationally. But in the mid 2010s, my colleague and friend Hans Karstenberg went to the USA, met Fred Kent, and together they decided, or Fred decided, to organize Placemaking Week that was then organized by PPS in Amsterdam in 2007. During that conference, we were the co-organizers as TIPO, where I was a partner at that stage. We discovered that there were 500 people in the conference approximately. And we thought, okay, it's in the Netherlands, it's in Europe. Let's have a special session in the conference where we invite all the European placemakers. There are roughly 80 or 100 of them. We got them together, and immediately is what's clear that we have so much to learn from each other. I think in Europe, for many generations, we've been trained to look at how special our own country is, and that we're really different, the Dutch planning system, from the system in other countries. But in 2017, during this conference, for me, I discovered, like, yeah, sure, we have differences, but we have so much in common. We have so many things to learn. That was the starting point, and then we started to organize our own conference in Stockholm in 2018, and Valencia last year. So it was inspired by PPS, but it was our own organization. Placemaking Europe is an independent organization. At the same time, Placemaking X is, of course, quite new. We love working together with Placemaking X because they have a fantastic network all over the world. We love the inspiration from not just the Kent family, but from all those active placemakers that we meet there. And we know they also get inspired by us. So I think we're one big family, but we're all our own organization too.
Yeah, that's really interesting story. And Naz, do you know how many members in the network, and where do you run this network? Is in which platforms?
So, as for the members of the network, I would be on the Facebook group. We already have like more than almost 3,000 people together with us. Then we have the newsletter subscribers, but we have the active members who are part of our working groups and working with us on a, let's say, day-to-day or like monthly basis. I think Jeroen would know the number there better, but overall, how do we manage and communicate with the with such a, let's say, big network? It's we have our Facebook channels, which are kind of divided thematically. We have this one big Facebook group, Placemaking Europe, that you're also part of. Then we have some of the thematics. So there is one for joint research. There is one for agenda, where we share the events, upcoming events. There is one where we also share the tools, placemaking tools. It's called Toolbox. Then we have inspiring films and media, where we share media sources and films. So there are several subgroups, let's say, as well. And then we also have for day-to-day communication, we also use quite frequently WhatsApp, and each working group would have their own WhatsApp where they would communicate the technicalities and organize maybe some meetings and meetups. Mm-hmm. Then also our newsletter that comes every month and helps us to reach out to update our network about the things, ongoing projects, and about updates about our network, but also from our partners. And it also helps us to reach out to a wider audience. And of course, our website, placemakingeurope.com. I can share maybe the link and we can post it in the description. But yeah, these are the different sources that we're using. We also have Twitter and Instagram, and LinkedIn groups. So we're kind of trying to cover the audiences everywhere, let's say. But yeah, these are the main channels that we're using usually.
Yeah, I can imagine so much content, so many interesting things going around. So, Jeroen, the question is why you decide, Placemaking Europe, why you decide to go for a newsletter, not only having it in different channels? Why you?
I think building on Nes' story, so we have the close to 3,000 people who follow us on Facebook, but a really big important group for us are our leaders and our working group members. I'd say there are roughly 100 of them, and those are the people. They're all over in almost all European countries. We have those active people, also outside Europe, and they really help us run the network, because we're a network of volunteers who do it for passion. Of course, also benefit from it with knowledge, and people get new opportunities because of the network. But it's quite crucial that it's not Stipo or Jeroen and Nas. It's really those 100 people that's really make it work, and we're always open for more people to join. And this also brings us to the newsletter, because what we try to do is give all those people a platform, and it's yes, we can do it on the website with articles and so forth. But we know that as volunteers, not everybody has a lot of time. So we were also looking for the way to share quick short stories, just photos and that kind of stuff, and curated, of course, by us, so we can help those people to share all the inspiration they have. We talked to them about it, and everybody loved the idea of a newsletter, because Facebook has its ups and its downs. Not everybody loves Facebook, and the same goes for other media. Newsletters are a little bit out of old fashions, but it's also good to. It's still a very popular medium, so that's why we decided for the newsletter.
Yeah, I believe it's a great idea because I had a talk with Nas before and I receive many newsletters, but actually I read very few of them. And the Placemaking Europe newsletter is one of the absolutely one that I really put the time to read because it's cool, it summarizes what's going on and very interesting. So again, thank you so much for all the offer that you put.
Maybe it's nice to say why we do it like that, huh? In 2012 with Tipo we wrote the book The City at Eye Level. And City at Eye Level is a collection of stories of people who, like us, work on great public space, great public plinth, and we just got their most passionate projects, and we got them together, and we combined them to finding the methods that are hidden in there, etc. All available for free if you want to download them, city@eyelevel.com. But we really love this trick because everybody was so happy that they were in the book. If you're in a book, people take you really seriously suddenly.
Yes.
So we thought this is also what we need to do with the newsletter. Let's not write the stories ourselves, but give the floor to the stories from all those other people. So this is the way that we like to develop the network. Give a platform to those people that we look up to, or we are inspired by, but also make sure that we always deliver quality. So we're very strict in it has to be good stories. We do the serious editorial work, and we get the people on board to also keep each other sharp. That it's always stories that make sense.
Yeah, and I really like this approach. Very great approach. Naz, I can imagine you have so much content. How do you decide the theme? Is there a theme for every newsletter?
Yeah, I think it was more for February. We decided to at least have a overarching theme for each newsletter. Since I started, I was trying to kind of follow this pattern maybe somehow, but it's quite dependent what is happening in the world around us, and also in our network and within the work of our partners. There was a case where we kind of defined a theme, and then we're trying to curate the stories accordingly. Like the February newsletter was on climate change, if you would remember. So we tried to even get the stories that were not very up to date or just fresh from this month, but also the stories that were super relevant, but maybe kind of remained a bit on the shelf. Also, we're trying to be responsive to what kind of contributions we're receiving each month from our members and what are the themes that matter to them and matter overall to the network. Obviously, when we shifted to this challenging or like the weird times of the pandemic, we tried to embrace that as well and readjust our newsletter in a way that it would be still relevant and still accessible to our readers.
Yeah. And do you collect the content by yourself or you make an open call?
Mm-hmm.
How do you collect the stories?
So yeah, the thing is that, as I told you, we have quite a different channels where our members share the news. So I always try to keep an eye on them, and when there is something relevant, just to note for the week where I would be working on the newsletter. Rather than that, we have a Google form that we usually post on the third week of the month and ask our members to contribute into this Google form and share with us their stories, cases, upcoming events. But we're also quite open for them to just approach us personally and be like, oh, Naz, I have this story. Would you like to share it? And then I would kind of direct them towards the format and photo and everything. And then the story would be ready. So we try to be, structured but approachable at the same time as well, and try to kind of remind each month that we have the newsletter upcoming, and it's a good platform for sharing the stories. So yeah. It's a combination.
And when you receive the content, how big is the team that go through the content, read it, or do you discuss it with Jeroen?
I think it's mostly me and Jeroen working on it. I filter most of the content and do the curation, let's say do the first layout, like the final draft or whatsoever. And then Jeroen and some other team members read it, proofread it, and we work on it together. But yeah, again, as Jeroen said, it's the newsletter of our 3,000 members. Rather, we're just doing the curating coordination and trying to put the content in a way that it makes sense and it's nicely written, yet, let's say, into the newsletter.
Maybe to add one thing to that, you're absolutely right how you describe it, explain it. But what's also getting more and more important in getting the newsletter together is that we do it together with our working groups. Mm-hmm. Because we love the themes, but for most of the themes, there are dedicated working groups of placemakers, let's say 30 of them in a working group. And then NAS approaches them and says, okay, this is your newsletter. What do you want to put in it? What is the message do you want to get from it? Do you want to attract new members, etc.? So we did, for instance, one about the tool testing group, the fantastic work. And in the near future, we just started a working group on culture and cultural squares. And there's a very important topic, especially in this COVID situation, because the cultural sector is very, very much influenced in a negative way by this virus. So with them, we want to start a dedicated workshop, but also one about housing, probably one again about films, maybe especially about podcasts. Now that's give you a little bit the floor. That's how we also make it a joint effort. So it's everybody in the network should feel a little bit responsible for keeping the newsletters flowing.
And do you feel sometimes that there's so much content and you need to say, no, we don't take this time, we take it next month? How do you deal with this amount of content?
It's a good question. That's one of the issues that we have. We noticed that we get more and more content, so we have to start choosing. And what we're doing now is we start to use our website more. So people have sometimes such great stories when we put them on the website, and then on the newsletter, we just do a short part of it. And we make sure that the newsletter connects to the website, to other sources in a better way. So I guess we're moving from a newsletter to really a multimedia Placemaking Europe experience with a YouTube channel and the website and a podcast and a newsletter. So, but all advice, all recommendations of great examples, please send them to us. Yeah.
I mean, also for some of the events, the newsletter is sent in a specific time of the month now. So that's why it also makes sense to direct people more towards our website and to show them through a newsletter where they find the similar kind of stories, so that when something happens, in the period when the newsletter is not there in their inbox, so that they can be updated about those things as well, or through our Facebook channels and etc. So it is definitely the idea and strategy behind it to make it more interconnected.
And do you get feedback from the people that's reading it? Like, oh, can you change this? Or what do you think about adding this section?
Yes, we get quite a lot of feedback, I would say, both from our colleagues and from network members. There is quite a lot of nice and positive feedback, but there is also quite a good amount of constructive criticism as well that helps us to improve it and make it better. each time, let's say. One of the one of the examples could be that some of our members mentioned to us that it's good to put our members into the forefront and the news from our members a bit more visible. And that's why in the last couple of months, the structure of the newsletter has changed a bit. And we started with introducing our leaders, and we also put emphasis on the working group news more. So we're working constantly on it. And this moment that Jeroen and I mentioned about interconnectedness, it all comes like as a result of feedback from others. It's not just, let's say, 2 or 3 brains thinking about it, but it's really based on collective thinking and collective feedback, let's say.
Yeah, yes, exactly. That's very important. And Jeroen, you were already in that the next step of newsletter that you were mentioning, that's gonna be multimedia and so on. So does it mean that the newsletter not going to continue, or what is the next step?
Well, I really like the newsletter, so I hope we can continue it for a very long time.
Yeah, me too, actually.
Yeah, but now one of the it's also very. I also love films, and so I hope that we can build this YouTube channel and also start organizing our placemaking film program by showing the right films. Well, one of the exciting things I didn't mention, but I look forward to, is the academic cooperation that we're starting. You probably know the Journal of Public Space, a very good journal about public space, obviously. And as Placemaking Europe, we now partner with Luisa Bravo to see how can we add more academic sessions where academic and practitioners meet as a as a part of her Journal of Public Space. And this would mean that besides having the light, fun Placemaking Europe newsletter, we also have a more serious academic version, and we'll probably start looking for the ways to approach different target groups. One of the challenges there will also be for ways, for instance, to get closer to the policymakers, to civil servants or to developers. So that's why we're also really happy that we work together with people like Charles Landry, who was the leader of the creative bureaucracy movement, to see how we can team up with him. If you talk about developers, we sometimes work together with ULI or other organizations. We'll see. We'll see what the future will bring us.
Super interesting journey. But you're not afraid that it's gonna be bigger and bigger and it lose the soul of it, if you understand my question?
Well, I think that the risk is that if you do something as a volunteer, which we do in Placemaking Europe, at some stage, you do it a lot, and at some stage it just is, the energy is gone. So we're always looking for ways to keep the energy flowing. And I think the way to do it is to connect to what people to topics they find important, not just as the idealist, but they can also use in their work. They can use it in, let's say, more professional or more, well, serious. It's not the right word, but in that kind of way. As long as we can keep up doing that, I think we will always have a new influx of people who want to help make the newsletter, organize new products. We also make a lot of books. By now, every year almost we make a book. So the City at Eye Level books, but also another one. So that's our main mission. So to keep it fresh and keep it functional for people, so people can use it. If we don't succeed in that, then the newsletter is not gonna last. At this stage, it's already bigger than ourselves. If I would stop now in Placemaking Europe, or Naas would stop, there will be other people who would say, we're gonna continue doing this. So I'm quite optimistic. Please help us out. So all volunteers who want to help with stories for the newsletter, always welcome.
Yes, that's great. So Naz, I wanted to ask you, what are the different sections in the newsletters now?
So the newsletter has generally, as I said, this content is divided into, let's say, two parts. Let's say roughly structurally, it would be the news from our members and from our working groups, and then we would also move into more generic news and updates from our partners and their events and interesting cases and reports. So it starts with introduction of 2 leaders each month, and then it goes into the working group news about which Jeroen talked quite a lot. Then we move on to the general news and updates and articles and good resources that are there, interesting reports that came out that month. Sometimes we have the book recommendations, and Also, one of the interesting I find and probably useful sections is also the save the date and coming up events. And we also share the open calls in our newsletter. So it consists of these different parts in general.
Yes, very interesting and very joyful actually to read the different stories in different sections. So again, thank you so much for sharing the stories behind the stage actually.
Oh, thank you so much for giving space to share that story.
My pleasure. And now I would love to ask some questions, some interesting questions, and then we wrap up the episode. I will start with you, Naz. The first question is, imagine you have a time machine and you go back in time. What will you change from urban planning and design perspective? One
Yeah.
thing you're allowed to change.
Okay. Well, maybe if I go and think about it for a long time, I might come with something else. But I would prevent the dominance of cars as it gone out of hand, let's say, some decades ago. So I would stop that and have the streets more balanced and have more space for pedestrians and cyclists there, and not make it normal that the streets are taken away by cars and dominated by them. I mean, I know that the transportation probably really also led to some economic growth within the cities, which can also be quite debated. But I think I would prevent that. That would be my number one thing.
Yes. So not giving the prior to cars and the traffic and the streets.
No, not making it normal that they occupy the whole space.
And Jeroen, what will you change if you go back in time?
Yes, well, I completely agree with Na's points, but I would have a more, let's say, theoretical starting point. I don't live in a house, I live in the city, and I feel responsible for what's happening in my city. And a lot of people I know also feel responsible, that I talked about before. But I would really change in time is to make sure that people can use this sense of responsibility to improve their cities. And this means that I would help to change the systems that we can prove. What we're learning now is that if you make a better street just in front of your door, that actually adds value to the whole neighborhood, and that's actually a good investment that people and governments and developers should support. We are now at a stage where we can prove the value creation that we have with placemaking and with those small initiatives. So now we are really ready to take giant steps together. But I really wish we would have had this knowledge 20, 30 years ago. Because if we could have started the coalition at that stage that we're about to start now, what you see happening all over the world in the cities, the process that's gonna happen to us in the near future of getting really great cities for everybody, we could have started that a long time ago and not having the mistakes of creating car cities that Nas talked about.
At least the new generation will not suffer.
The new generation will have a really, really challenging job, and it's gonna be a fantastic period to work on cities.
And the second question is, what will you add to the cities if you have the possibility to add one thing that also related to urban planning and design?
Well, it's very related to what I just what we just talked about. I'm really inspired by the project that happened in Rotterdam in the last 10 years, where they shifted to what they called the city lounge strategy. I think the city lounge approach, where you have space that's really that's part of your house. That's something that we try to create now in all the different areas, not just in the inner city, but also on living areas, on housing areas, on areas with where a lot of companies are, and so forth. I think with our placemaking knowledge, the city at eye level knowledge, and all the disciplines we have in the network, we can really, really create those spaces really fast. So I would love that to happen and make people like Jane Jake, Brad Kent, and all those other people who were there before us very proud.
Oh my God, that's so great to hear. Naz, what will you add to our cities?
If I look at it from a very generic, let's say, perspective of the different contexts that I know, I think I would like to increase the amount of urban commons and places where people can co-create and that can facilitate collective action among people. So that would be one, let's say, thing that I would put more or less in every context. Some of the cities and countries have more of it, some others less. I think what Jeroen mentioned about the participation is very important. I would like from the past to the beginning, I would really want to accelerate that process of including people into the urban planning and really including them, not just on paper and for formalities, but really making it a co-creation process. So I think, yeah, that would be something that I would definitely would like to add.
Yeah, super interesting reflections. Thank you so much again for sharing with us.
Thank you. It's nice to think about this imaginary world sometimes and go
Yeah,
out of the realities and be a bit,
always.
utopian maybe about
And
it.
I also believe all dreams can come true if we really have the passion and the love to our cities.
I think your podcast really makes sure that people also get connected on this subject. So thank you for doing this. Huh? It's really a very important initiative.
My pleasure. Well,
Yeah.
how would you like to summarize what we talked about in three takeaway messages to all the people that listening?
I'd say let's create cities together. Let's work. Let's make better cities together. That would be the first one. Second one, adding value is not just about financial value. It's about financial, social, economical, cultural value. Look at value in very different ways. And finally, the best is yet to come. So let's start have fun and creating better cities together.
So much positive energy. Naz, what will be your takeaway messages to all the listeners?
Something that I quite a lot also learned from Jeroen is the process of co-creation. It's very important. It's not maybe as easy as it seems in the words, and then it requires some personal commitment as well to it. So, and I find it very important and fulfilling once you are in this process and once you start seeing the results. Also, the keeping the enthusiasm about things and being still energetic and seeing the positive, let's say, side of the thing, even if it gets grim a bit. That's might be the case quite a lot with the matters in urbanism and city development. And also being probably resilient and quite agile is something that I've discovered lately. And also because there are so many changes and happenings, especially now more than ever before. There are many transformations that urbanists were dreaming of for years and years, like the streets are opening up a bit, the cyclists are coming back and are given more space. But so being agile and integrating it into our work, I think, is very important and nice.
Great takeaway messages. Thank you so much. And now the three hashtags for the episode.
Wait, I'm gonna add one takeaway message.
Of course, yes.
I have to, now we're all in this horrible COVID situation, but we also it's clear that there's a lot of problems that we are facing at this stage. But it's also clear that this is the moment that nothing can be taken for granted anymore. Also, not so the problems that we have in the cities. So the moment to act is really now. And so let's use the moment together as placemakers in Europe to change our cities, to speed up this transformation process. Because what we can change in the coming year will probably be changed for a very long time. And if we miss this momentum, the risk is that we go back to previous rituals that we really want to get rid of. So I really hope we can do that.
Yes, of course. That's very great takeaway messages. And now we all talk about the new normal and the normal and what to do. So it's a big moment to reflect, but also not only to reflect, to take action and move forward, actually. But I believe the future is promising. So, hashtags.
Co-create might be one. Placemaking Europe might be second one.
Yes.
Jeroen, third one.
Placemaking is the new normal. It's a very long hashtag, but we still have to do it.
Yes.
Ownership, dare to do it.
Yes. Thank you so much again. I'm very inspired by this conversation. Thank you so much, really.
So nice to hear. I'm also, it's really interesting. Yeah, I think we look at the things from a different angle when we're in such a conversation. It's so nice.
And so what is going to be your next step?
Well, if the next step, if you talk about how far ahead do you want to look?
It's up to you. I leave the creativity to you.
Okay. Well, the next step for me is I just became a civil servant. I'm now the head of housing in the municipality in the Netherlands, and I really love this opportunity that I have now to also work from inside the system, where they really try to build the system in a way that we can also support all those initiatives that are in the city. I love to see how I can help to make the system work even better. So that's a personal challenge that I have. So I'd say I already love civil servants, but I haven't been a civil servant for a very long time. But I also want to show the fantastic things in Placemaking Europe that the civil servants do. And I also want to inspire the civil servants with what all the placemakers in Europe and beyond do.
That's fantastic. I wish you all the good luck with all the different goals and the project you're running now.
Thanks.
Naz, the next step for you is?
So the next step for me is probably less certain than for Jeroen, but I also have a couple of, yes, let's say, things lined up or ideas. One of the things might be that I might go for a research project in transformation of housing in Kazakhstan in fall, if things get better, but only for a couple of months. But then one of the main focuses for me would be to also come up with the new ideas and proposals and collaborations where I can still be engaged with the network of the Placemaking Europe and work in placemaking and urban transformation. And yeah, to create something and work on something new, it would be really nice. So
yes, and also good luck with your journey.
Thank you.
Well, again, thank you so much for giving your time to the podcast and for inspiring us. Thank you so much again.
Thank you.
And thank you so much for listening to Urbanistica podcast. Please follow Instagram and subscribe YouTube channel for live talks. And also don't forget to read the Placemaking Europe newsletter. If you have any great story that makes our city smarter, please contact me. Urbanistica is being produced in collaboration with Landskapslaget, working with landscape architecture and urban design based in Stockholm. And I'm Mustafa Sharif. Keep up the good work. Keep loving cities.